Welcome back to Life, Biz, and all that jazz. I'm your host, Jasmine Lashotto. If you're new here, welcome. Welcome to the family. If you've come back for more, thank you for trusting my vision and coming back for more. So today is the recap of season 2 Unmasked. I am so excited to start season 3 to begin with, and also just to reflect with you on season 2. So today's episode, we're going to be sharing some snippets from the whole season. This goes back to when I first started having my guests. I think it's episode 24. Anyway, it'll be in the show notes. It will be a bit clearer. So I'm going to get a little bit comfy because I am so proud of what I've created. And something I think that's really hard for people to do is to be proud of themselves, because I've been there. I've been there and not wanted to be proud of myself, not wanted to share my wins, not wanted to share my excitement for my life going right, because it's so easy for people around you to dismiss that, to feel that you can't be excited because other people aren't excited around you. The right people will be excited for you. If people aren't excited for you, that's a them thing, not a you thing. So you never should have to dull your sparkle, we'll call it, just to make someone else happy, because that sucks. That really sucks that life's like that. Anyway, I'm not going to rant on too much about that for today's episode. Today's episode is obviously a recap. There's been a lot of guests. I think the first season was fun for me to reflect. And can I also just say, I feel like I've healed more. And I know this is because of my sobriety journey, my fitness journey, eating, like really working my brain and my systems and my life together, regulation. But I feel like in the last year and a half since I did the podcast, I've healed more of my deeper trauma wounds and triggers than what I have my entire life. Whether that is just a coincidence because of everything else that I'm working on in my life and what I really build it up to be, and how I'm 100% aligned with who I want to be, the life I want to have, and what I do every single day, or it's because of the podcast. Because I feel like the people that I've talked to, the reflection of my own life, the stories that I've had to share and go back deeper in to from my past, from my childhood. There's also something that I read, and it was, the more that you talk about your trauma, and I know it's not easy to do, but once you start to do it, and it takes time and you really need to build that up with a professional. I'm not saying that you could do that with anyone, or you should just maybe look at doing that yourself, because it can be quite triggering. But the more that you look into your trauma and talk about it, the more free you are from it. And I personally feel that. Whether it's going to be the same for everyone, for yourself, I don't know. But that's just something that I also wanted to share. So that's kind of a few wins that I feel like I've taken from the podcast. And I also wanted to use my handheld mic today because I just think it's so cute. And yeah, it's a special episode. So season 2, Unmasked. It ended so much more amazing than I expected. It really cracked open a lot. It cracked open grief, sobriety, also was talking to other people that are doing what I'm doing, that are writing books, that are healing people's brains, that are helping people through sobriety, that are speakers, guest speakers. And the amount of people and the incredible people that I've had on this season have not only showed me the great work that they're doing and that I'm not alone with my mission, but also really helped me see who I am and what I have to offer, and build up that confidence of, you are in a space and you have been through enough. You have been through a lot. You have come out the other side. You need to share that, because it's also a bit scary sharing what I do all the time and thinking about the judgments, but I've removed that. And that's another thing with triggers and feeling triggered. I embrace that now. And that's something that I really learned dealing with this season, is because I know that triggers make me grow, and the more I get triggered with something, the better I become and the better person I become. I can really look into that and unpack that and think of, how can I move forward? If you've been here from the start, you know that I'm studying neuroscience. I've mentioned it multiple times. I love talking about it, and I'm so excited to be on that journey. But that's a long haul journey. So I wanted to do something that I could implement now and have another branch of the podcast, and also my personal brand, Jasmine Lashotto, and that is becoming an ADHD coach, because I've just nailed my ADHD. Like, my brain is amazing. It's so amazing. And I wouldn't have what I have now and be doing this if it wasn't for that, if it wasn't for having just crazy dreams or, being delusional and having discipline and really just wanting to have the most amazing life for myself and be able to share with other people that you can achieve this. If you follow the steps, if you follow it day by day, 1% better every single day, you can have anything that you want to have. And I really want to instill that dream big, believe in yourself mentality in people that don't have it and they've never had it. They've never had that support or, they've lost it along the way. So yeah, I became an ADHD coach. It was just a short course, so a few months, but it's enough for me to have a base of my lived experience. Now, the formal education of how to deliver that and the structure, and to be able to support people and know that, what I know from my journey, and I know how to tailor that now to other people's journeys. So that's something that's really, really exciting. And there'll be more episodes on that as well, where I can explain more what I can help with, what we can work on. And I'll just obviously be sharing so much information already. So you don't necessarily need to work with me. There's already going to be enough information on here, but that's something that I wanted to have as an addition to what I'm offering with Life Biz and all that jazz. So let's go back and have a look at some earlier episodes. Every guest this season held up a mirror, whether it was sobriety, relationships, identity, creativity, trauma, mental health, you name it. We had a lot of topics. We had some amazing guests. So let's go back to some earlier episodes now and have a look. A trip down memory lane, we can call it.
I'd went somewhere so you wouldn't have saw what you saw.
Yeah, that was always a hard thing for you, knowing that.
Yeah, so guilty that you have to see that, and guilty for him that he got to that point.
No return.
And people don't understand. And then there was comments made that what did she do to him now? Like,
yeah, I know that's always been a really hard one.
Yeah,
yeah,
it was said by more than one person, and you had no idea what my life was like.
Yeah, but that's the thing, is because people
see one side.
Yeah. They just blame the woman.
They've got to look at my children and what they went through and what they would have kept going through. And me, like, we had nothing.
And I think it's just taking that first step and knowing that no one's ever alone.
Mm-hmm.
And I know more and more, there's a lot more people, especially with social media, like there's a lot more people talking more about stuff. And I think that's where I kind of was just following a lot of people that weren't drinking anymore. And, having people around like that positive energy and, seeing that it does help. So I think there's always just that, it's just that initial step of just getting that hope and knowing that, you're not alone. How do you define strength as a man?
I would say strength would just, to me now, would be stillness. So like I always say that's something I come back to, like slowing down and slowing down the stillness, and it's like solidness. And not reacting, just being aware of what's there or what's going on, and then making a rational, grounded decision for that. So I'd say, yeah, strength would be like stillness, being numb.
It inspires you when you can see that feeling.
My story is pretty drastic, but I want people to know that if it wasn't for other people, I would be dead today. My thinking led me to a hospital bed, fighting for my life. And people that have walked this path before me stepped in and gave me my life back. I had to give them faith. I had to believe that it was possible and listen. And I know for many, getting to this point can be hard, and it can take some real dark days to get there. But if you're listening, I want you to know that, faith if is needed.
Yes. And the support's always there. What would you say to someone if they, listening now and they're thinking about, taking the first step? What would be your advice?
I think if anyone's listening and they are struggling, I think one of the main first steps is to reach out to someone. I think we all know the good people in our lives.
The guilt is maybe tied to, again, for me, and I can only speak from my personal experience, the guilt was the guilt of wanting more. So then I would question that belief. What's wrong with wanting more? What am I making it mean about me? Why is it a bad thing that I want more? Why would I feel guilty for that? And if we start to question our thoughts and our stories, then we could start to change our relationship with them. So then for me, when I would question that, I would be like, well, it's because society told me, or I grew up believing that I had to just appreciate what I had. And it was selfish to want more. But am I a selfish person? No, I'm not. Then kind of questioning again, okay, well, what is it about me that wants more?
There's one that says it's an evolutionary advantage. It's the kind of people who have ADHD are the kind of people who are up for exploring new territories, who are up for hunting animals, taking risk, and just being a little bit more sensitive to novel stimulation and sounds and things out there in nature. So that already kind of gives it that superpower from evolution standpoint, and not really anything to fear, not just a superpower that is maladapted to the modern world because it was not tailored towards it. And
trauma shapes our brain from early, depending on how old we are, and our brains are shaped from zero. So if you experience things as a child, your brain's going to react different to life circumstances because of the trauma. And this is something people that haven't been through trauma, and bless them, they try and support. Most people will, and it's that not understanding. You can't understand how someone's feeling and tell them, you'll get over it, you'll be okay, because it's more than just a memory and a thought. It's embedded into their, personality, your character traits, and your constant daily way of thinking. And I think that's when understanding the subconscious really does help with the next stages to healing. What do you think about subconscious? You mentioned that relying on the pension system just wasn't going to cut it, and it was going to leave you broke. So I think that's a really exciting way for us to start this conversation today.
Yeah. Well, pension systems across the globe are different, but where I am, it's destined to die sooner or later. It's just the way that it has been structured, restructured, and all of that. But realizing in your specific situation, in your specific country, if you can rely on this income in your golden years, is a great starting point to understanding your situation. Compare it to your goals. So you got to have the goals also, and not just, go with the flow and, let anything happen. So compare it to your goals and see the gap. And from then on, it's all about just planning and researching a little bit to make sure that whatever you want to live and experience in later years is achievable, and is achievable in a not a frustrating way. Like, you don't have to work till you die.
Do you have a quote or a mantra that you live by, or you like to say?
Yes, I do. One of my favorites that I created with my name for my morning motivation is, when life hands you lemons, place them in a vase and call them decor.
Oh, wow. I've never heard that one before.
I created it.
Yes. I love, like, you hear lemons make tequila, lemonade, all this stuff. So that's such a different way to put it. That's amazing. Mine's progress, not perfection. That's what I always find is, for me, I've always had the perfectionist, try to be perfect with everything. And that also stems back from, childhood and trying to be seen.
I'll just end by saying that something that's been really transformative in my life the last 5 or 6 years has been reconnecting with my artist self. And I mentioned not forcing this in there, so hopefully it doesn't feel forced to your listeners. But tying it in with the trauma work, I just wrote a novel the last 5 years, and it was really a place for me to integrate and explore all of my hopes, fears, despairs, and aspirations for the world and humanity. And if you're interested, you can go to jessiekjohnson.com if you like speculative sci-fi kind of novels. But the deeper, I think, support piece for your folks is that it really, like, going through the artistic process every day really helped me come into myself.
We all have a choice. We have two choices, actually. The choice of moving up and the choice of staying where you're at. When you decide that you want to level up, when you decide that you're sick and tired of being in the same spot, that's when you're like, okay, you know what? I need to make a change. I was sick and tired of not having money. I was sick and tired of being in debt. I was sick and tired of being alone. And I was sick and tired of just being at the bottom. And when I made a decision saying that I'm so sick and tired of having that, it's not just, hey, I'm going to dip my toe in the water. No, I'm going to cannonball in the water because I'm ready to go. And to all the audience out there, as you guys start your journey, once you make a decision, I think it starts with a decision first. It doesn't start with who makes a decision for you. It's the decision that you make alone. Once you make the decision alone, watch how things can change in a night, in a heartbeat.
I essentially help people to, number one, get clear on what it is they want, because I think sometimes I say, like, I ask people, like, what do you want? And they haven't even asked themselves that question for so long because they're so used to following what they think they should be doing. So first of all, it's getting clear on that. But second of all, what I found with most people is that even when you're clear on that excitement, that connection to the vision comes, and then you start taking steps. And then either someone else's opinion will throw you off or your own self-doubt will kick in. And then it's about really building that inner confidence and the courage to go after that. So I essentially help people to go after what really lights them up, to get clear on that and to go after that, to have the courage to go after that.
I remember I used to have this ridiculously unattainable goal of the term happy. I wanted to be happy. That was like my goal. And happiness was never feeling sad, never feeling any low moments, never having dark, never getting mad, never like, well, who's that? That's like a robot. Like, that doesn't exist. But, once a perfectionist, always a perfectionist. And I really worked on that aspect of myself. But it was even a perfectionist in my mental health. That I can only be healed, which I no longer believed anyone's healed. That we're all in the process of consistently and constantly healing. Yes. But how I used to think is once I was healed, I would feel this weird amorphous happy that I imagine someone in Pleasantville, I guess, feels. I don't know. So I think it's also rearranging my expectations, and that I'm still going to have pain, and I'm still going to lose my temper, and I'm still going to have dark thoughts, but doesn't mean I'm bad. It doesn't mean I'm broken. It doesn't mean something's wrong with me. It actually means I'm human, which is super beautiful.
This was a lovely, bubbly lady, right? As soon as I walked up to the house, it was like, oh my God, it was like a cloud over it. It was so dark and heavy. It was a huge house. And I walked in and I could see why the dog didn't want to go in this area, because it was that's the first place I'm starting, because if I need a wee, I'm not going in there till after us, basically.
Yes.
But as a result, it was that's the place where my features changed, which terrified my client, because I'd never had that happen before either.
It was probably the hardest part in my life, because my whole life I was motivated by anger. Anger was my best friend. Anger was there with me through thick and thin. Anger is the reason why I put myself through school, why I got my degrees, why I've always worked hard for everything I have, because I was always going to prove those people wrong again, right? I was never going to be that victim again. I decided at 15 years old, I'm never going to be a victim of anyone ever again in my life. But then I ended up in all these terrible relationships, one after the other. And when I started to do that inner work, I ended up finding peace. But then I was lost. I had no idea who Nika was when she's not angry. I had no clue, and I missed my anger.
I had emotionally unavailable parents, and as an adult, I understand what that means and why it is, etc. But as a child, I wasn't able to understand any of that. So I interpreted the situation in that I didn't deserve to be loved. So I developed that limiting belief from a very young age. Or limiting beliefs drive your behaviors, which attract all your various experiences into your life. And so I went through a
big majority of my life with that limiting belief. I felt like I had to chase and perform for love and approval. So I was caught up in that hamster wheel for a very long time. People pleased because I cared more about what other people thought of me than what I thought of myself. That showed up in all areas of my life.
I didn't know, honestly, until I started writing this book and I interviewed her, and I believe it was chapter 1, that she tried to kill herself at that point, and I had no idea. I had no idea. So that was heartbreaking. I did not know the depth of the pain that she was in. I knew all the things that were happening, but I just did not. She hid it well, too, I would say. I mean, she played volleyball. She was a super sweet kid. She didn't really act out. She made some really interesting choices of friends there once she started using drugs, but she did end up using drugs after her brother moved out. He graduated and moved out. He moved to live with his dad, which wasn't a surprise. But she then was all alone, and she was all alone. She was really sad. She felt abandoned. She felt like nobody loved her.
Because then through the weirdness and the messiness is the breakthrough.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, I love that. If you could give anyone advice today that hasn't thought about any type of therapy, but maybe they used to be creative when they're younger, what would you give them? What advice would you give them when it comes to art therapy?
I'd say give it a go. And I think, you spoke about what you do. There are things that I will often encourage and part of my sessions, the part of the ritual, I guess, around my sessions is a guided meditation. But there are other things you can do in your home. You can have a playlist, you can light a candle, and you can do what we do, breathing brush strokes, where you take a nice long deep breath and you just maybe draw a line or a paint and as you're exhaling, and then you just do that 3 times. And then your brain, once you do it a few times, your brain begins to cue and go, oh, I know what we're doing now. We're doing this self-reflection stuff. Great. I'm ready. So instituting little rituals before you start any kind of activity is really important for getting the best out of it. Yeah.
Our whole life is a series of patterns. We have thoughts that lead to feelings, that lead to actions, that lead to outcomes. Once we have the outcome, we either think it's a positive or negative outcome. We'll have another set of thoughts, another set of feelings, take action. And we're constantly going through these cycles of patterns with our relationships, with our finances, with our work. We're just going through these cycles. The map of emotion is the second aspect of the pattern model. I call it a pattern model: thought, feeling, action, outcome. The second aspect is the feeling.
And I think, another part of that is to just always be kind to you.
Yes.
The compassion for yourself, forgiving yourself. And that's something we didn't talk about, but I don't believe that you need to forgive another person in your life at all whatsoever. It's really nice if you get there. But the one person that you do need to forgive is yourself.
Would you like to touch on that a little bit further?
With a lot of the different belief systems and everything else, they talk about forgiveness, and we need to give all of the other people. And I think that it's very, very hard for us to give someone else something. And even if we're doing it for ourselves, okay, we're going to forgive them for us. But if we have not forgiven ourselves first, it's very, very hard. And it doesn't mean, this isn't the, victim shaming or anything, but we know that there are things that we have done that have contributed to where we've gotten in our life.
I'll go back to December of 2021. I fell into a really bad depression. I was changing careers. My previous career, I was a bartender for 12 years. So I served people the drink that I eventually completely addicted to. And so to cope with my depression, I was drinking copious amounts of beer. I mean, when I say copious amounts, it was averaging 12 a day.
Yes.
It just, that 2022 is a blur to me because most of it was spent drinking and buying my beer and feeling ashamed. And then the anxiety just came. It was just, I'm not an anxious person. And I would have to drink a beer or two just to go to the store to go get anything I needed, grocery store or whatever. And I just fell into this horrible place.
This is probably one of the top questions I get and comments, actually, a lot of comments online sometimes about, well, that doesn't look weird. That's not weird enough. And I was like, it's not about started weirdo weddings because I've always been friends with weirdos and we call ourselves weirdos in the fine art industry, in the photography world.
Yeah.
My friend started a convention with nothing but weirdos and we called ourselves that. And I was like, well, you know what? Come to think of it, nobody's doing that in the wedding industry. And why can't that be me? And so I took that fine art weirdo side of myself and just moved it into a new community called Weirdo Weddings.
I think the best way to say that is life was just ordinary to me. Life was just one day followed the next. And I just always thought, this is what it is. I had dreams and I had hopes and all those things, but I didn't really think that my life could be very much different than the lives of people that I saw around me. I thought that I would always have the same types of friends that I had, have the same type of job that I had, have the same type of expectations for my life that I had. It never occurred to me that I could or would want to have something different.
Lovely. Thank you for sharing that. I think one of the biggest things that people don't realize until they kind of make that decision is we get to change. We get to change at any point. We get to control the way that we think or the way that we're feeling or, the way that we react to certain situations. What is some of your biggest resistance that you feel like that you've had with clients that you've worked through?
Definitely a lot on the boundaries. So I think we already mentioned the one, which was, well, I don't feel worthy of asking someone for help, whether that was the kids. And so then you're not even keeping the chore boundaries that you set. Well, I could ask them to do this, but, and then you kind of talk yourself out of it. And then there's also the self-expectation boundary of, well, I feel culturally speaking that my role as a wife and mother includes this, this, and this. And so now you're trying to run the business and work on top of that, and it won't all fit in. Or there can also be the case where you know very well what your needs are. You're like, I really need to go to yoga 3 times a week, or I feel terrible. But my kids want this and expect me to help with their homework, and they didn't clean up from the bath, and there's some more mold in the shower, and you feel that your role in the family is the person who fixes everything. So even though you really need that exercise class, you won't do it because you don't want to make them uncomfortable.
A motivational video came on. And, the kind where the people are running very slowly and doing long jumps, and there are voiceovers of people saying very dramatic things, very important things. And so I was like, oh, well, this is new. And I sat down on the sofa, and then I heard Steve Jobs' voice. What have you got for me, Steve Jobs? And he said, I've got a message for everybody whose life isn't making any sense. And you're trying really hard and nothing's working. And I was like, yeah. That's me. Oh my God, that's exactly what I prayed for yesterday. And he's like, so you must listen to me because it all comes down to this. And I was like, okay, yeah, tell me what it is. What do I need to know? And he said, it's only when you get to the other side of the crisis that you can look back and connect the dots.
One thing you mentioned as well is you wrote a list for yourself of what you brought to the table, which I think that's important to remember as well, because often we can be looking at what we want from someone else, but we don't look at the qualities. I think it's very powerful knowing the qualities that we have and helping with that, boosting that self-esteem and knowing that what we bring to the table is what we expect as well from the other side. Easy to get caught up in relationships, and I'm guilty of this, is just wanting them to like me and putting up with so much because I didn't want to lose that. And I was like, no, like this is it. It has to be it. But then I'm like, well, this isn't what I want anyway. It's easy to get lost in that. The biggest thing is self-compassion. Do you find? Because when you're in a toxic relationship or, marriage, and you could already be feeling so down and nothing can get better. But I think if you just know that, you're doing your best.
It's really important to remember that you should meet yourself wherever you're at.
Yes.
So we expect perfection from ourselves. And it's really powerful when you think about the way that we speak to ourselves internally. For me personally, to think, well, would I talk to my child like that? Would I talk to my spouse the way I'm talking to myself, or my best friend? And the answer is no. So why do we think it's okay to have that kind of dialogue with ourselves? And To your point, you mentioned, kind of not changing yourself, but forgetting what you bring to the table in a relationship just because you want to be liked. And I also really see how often we water down ourselves to be compatible with everybody else or to give them this version that we believe will make them like us more and all of that.
Roughly 5 stories. And so they are customer service, college, freelancing, business partners, and going corporate. And each story is a true story. There might be some kind of like punch ups and dialogue, but everything in the story happened. And so it's almost like a funny essay. And then at the end of each story, I share kind of fumbles I made, lessons I've learned, and then questions where you can ask yourself so you hopefully don't make the same mistakes I did.
And you mentioned that for yourself, you don't like to make the same mistakes twice. Was there a certain point when you started to think like that, or have you always learnt from your lessons? Because I haven't. I now,
Ooh.
yes, but
Yeah.
before, it's taken me a while to actually learn and then actually take on board and, more or less break down what went wrong and how I can move forward and have that growth.
I could not agree more. And in my wise old age of 37, I feel like there's still some things I should probably learn. I've learned that I should have learned already, but I would say it's probably, I hate to say it, but it's like I'm someone who maybe needs to learn things the hard way. Like, don't touch that stove. Okay. Oh, that's hot. Now I know not to touch that stove.
So all the links to those episodes will be in the show notes if you do want to go back and watch any of the other ones. I'll also be sharing some recaps on socials, so make sure you're following. You can find that also in the show notes. There's a few other moments that I wanted to share, and one of them that I'm really, really proud of was obviously Podcastathon. So Podcastathon was hard. It was really hard to do. I will say that first. And the episode before that, where I read out my dad's book, where he was featured in a book at a good time of his life, where he says that he beat depression. I am nobody, I'm just Grazie. That reading that just broke my heart again. And that feeling, that pain would have usually sent me to drink wine, to get drunk, to just not care, to numb. But instead, I've reframed that. I reframe that and I let that pain now be the fire that I can't bring my dad back. But would he want me to waste my life, or would he want me to be doing what I'm doing and sharing this and helping people like he did up until his last breath? And I know what the answer is, and I'm sure you do too. And that is doing what I'm doing. So that was really, really hard, but I was just so proud to work with Lifeline and to choose Lifeline. And I'm going to be doing some more work with them, some volunteering and featuring my story, which I'm really, really excited to share. That's only the start of what I'll be doing with charities now that I have that ability to be able to put more into that. If there is any specific charities that you would like me to have on the podcast as a guest, I would love to hear that. If you have anyone that you think would be a great guest, please send me an email, send me a message, a DM, whatever, however you want to contact me. I'd love to hear, or I can reach out to them if you just want to send their details through or share some content, share a reel that they've done, and I can reach out to them, whatever you think. Even if you don't know them personally and you think they'd be a great guest that you want to hear, I'm more than open to reach out and to try and have them on. I want to be able to do that for you. I want to be able to have people on that you really, really want to hear, and then maybe people on that you hear that you don't actually know that you needed to hear. So that's something that's really cool as well. One of the other bigger things that I want to cover is I just want to thank you. I want to thank you for listening. Whether you've listened to every episode, whether you've listened to a few episodes, I'm so grateful to have my best friends who share when they're listening to my episode or talk to me about it, like give me feedback, and they know exactly who they are. And my best friend, Sam, I'll give her a shout out because she's a big reason why I started for years and years and years. And this would be over many bottles of Prosecco. I'm getting teary now because I just love her so much. We would talk and I'd tell her my story. And it was probably for a few years before she even knew about like what happened with my childhood or my dad. Probably a good, I'd say like 5 years we were friends. And that's something that, because I moved to Queensland, no one in Queensland knew what I'd been through with my childhood or anything like that, or didn't know. She hadn't met my dad then. And obviously, yeah, I saw my family all the time, but I'd go away to Sydney or away to see them. She would always tell me, you need to start a podcast. You need to start a podcast, for years and years and years. And I always wanted to, but I didn't have that courage. And I think that's hearing someone else so close to me know my story and want me to do that and support me to do that. It's just been great. It's been really, really great to have that. And then obviously, you know, my other girls, you know who you are as well. Thank you so much for being there and supporting me throughout my journey, and everyone that has been there. And to my family, I know that it's not been easy to hear and relive some of these stories, but I think in a way there has been a shift with us, with our relationship, with our speaking up, that has been a positive effect, because I've never done this from a place of wanting to relive and to bring back trauma on any of us. I've always done this because I want to set us free from our traumas, and I know that that's what I've been able to do. So, season 3, what's it called? It's called Becoming. Becoming. Because we are not broken, we are becoming. And whether that's becoming for the rest of our lives, or whether we are becoming a new version, whether we are becoming a new version, I guess there's no other really way to say it. And it doesn't matter how long the becoming stage goes for. It doesn't matter if it's started yet. It doesn't matter if you feel like you've become her, him. Life is a journey, and life is about being better and constantly being better and working on yourself, especially if you struggle with mental health. I will tell this to you right now, stare you in the eyes and tell you that if you struggle with your mental health and you feel like you keep going off track and then coming back, just you need to admit and you need to accept that it's going to be a lifelong journey, and there's nothing wrong with that. How cool that you get to become a better person every single day. How cool that you get to level up all the time. Like, that's how we need to reframe struggling with your mental health. It's not about struggle. It's about working on ourselves and becoming better versions of ourselves. So because of my life has really gone to the next level and taken an upgrade when it comes to me personally, my business, where I'm going with the podcast, where I'm going with Jasmine Lashotto, there's so many factors that's going on. The podcast is having an upgrade, like I said. Going to try and do 2 episodes a week. It's not going to be 2 guests a week. I'm sorry, I don't have that capability right now until I do the podcast pretty much full time, which is something that I really want to work on. Another big goal this year is to get some sponsorships so that I'm able to run ads with the podcast. I really want to create more content, and to be able to do that, I need to have the time to do that. I also need to have the studio. I would like to be able to do this and hire someone to be able to do all the editing. Why I love the editing. I do love looking back at it. It does take time, especially if I'm going to do 2 episodes a week. And then there's the shorts. There's a lot that goes into this behind the scenes. That's one thing this year is looking for sponsorship. So if you do know anyone, or you are someone that would like to sponsor, I'd love to have a chat. I have very small packages up to large packages. It really depends on what you want from me, what you want from the podcast, what you want to share with your business, or whatever you are wanting to sponsor through. So that's something that's really, really cool that I've really wanted to work on. I think really being able to just reach more people. So if you haven't followed or subscribed, please do that. Share where you can. You don't understand how much organic growth helps. So whatever you can do in that way, just like the podcast, just literally give me a review, like the content that I share. Every single like and every single interaction helps boost us to the next direction, which is the next person that we want to reach that could really need to hear this podcast. Teaser for season 3, it's going to be about ADHD, sobriety, more on relationships, neurodivergent entrepreneurship, starting a business, running a business, leveling up your business, creating a life that feels like yours, mental health strategies, mental health overall, neuroscience. There's going to be so many amazing topics, and I'm just so excited to share them. So that's enough from me for today. If season 2 found you at a hard time, I hope it helped. I hope it helped you progress. I'd love to hear feedback from the season. Any words, please comment, send me a message, an email, however you want to contact me. I really appreciate it. You don't understand when I hear your messages and feedback. It literally just lights up my soul. It's so nice to hear. It's hard to explain, but I love it. I really, really love it. And just remember, you are not broken. You are not behind. You are becoming. And it's all about progress, not perfection. I will see you next week.